Today, let's see where we left off. I think we left off by Metzia Daf on Nun Ches, 58A. That makes sense? Right. I mean, say paid watchman doesn't have to pay for lost or stolen on these items, which is hektish, cut land, slaves, all that stuff. Well, halacha is different by these items. We thank Hashem. We're learning Torah every day. This was we're learning Metzia Daf. We're learning Nishmas, Havagol the Baruch Binyamin and Tanel Zev and Zion. Whoever needs a refuah shleima. Okay, so the Gemara says like this: Metzia Daf and Mishalim. Quote from the Mishnah that the Shemer Sachar doesn't have to pay what he would normally pay for, which is Geneva V'Aveda, stolen or lost. When it comes to slaves and documents, land and hektish, he doesn't have to pay. Well, Ramile Rabbi Yosef Bar Chama Rabba. Rabbi Yosef Bar Chama says to Rabba, I believe Rabbi Yosef Bar Chama is Rabba's father. Rabba is Rabba Bar Rabbi Yosef Bar Chama. So he says to Rabba, Tanan, it was taught in the Mishnah, in our Mishnah, Metzia Daf and Mishalim, that a Shemer Sachar doesn't have to pay if something happens to the property that he was watching. Well, there's a contradiction. It says, if someone hires a worker, now we're talking about specifically, the Gizbar, the treasurer of the Beis Hamikdash, that hires a worker, Lishmer Sapara, to watch the Paraduma, make sure no one does work with it, make sure it doesn't get a blemish. Lishmer Satina, to watch the child that was prepared to draw the water. They had these children that were raised in special places that they should be pure, should never become impure. The Gemara Sukkah discusses. And then they would ride them on boards. Anyway, he had to watch. Someone was hired to watch this child, Lishmer Sazram, or to maybe watch the grain that was growing for the Omer. It's either Shemitah or for whatever reason he has to watch the grain. Ain't nicely schar Shabbos. You can't pay him. What's the problem? No, for the paraduma. For the red heifer, it had to be extra pure. Well, ain't nicely schar Shabbos. You don't pay him for his work on Shabbos because he's getting paid by the day. Shabbos would be another day. You don't pay specifically for the day. And therefore, if something happens on Shabbos, he doesn't have the responsibility for Shabbos. He's not being paid for Shabbos. Now we change it. Shabbos over here means for a week. If he's hired for a week at a time, so which means that it's what's called havla. It's going to be paid for everything all in one. Doesn't get paid for each day. It's paid $100 a week,
including Shabbos.
And including Shabbos. Or let's say Schir Chodesh gets paid for the month. Or Schir Shana, it gets paid by the year. All of those include Shabbos. Schir Shavuot gets paid for 7 years. It's a big contract there. So nicely Schar Shabbos, then he gets paid. We don't subtract 1/7 from the whole thing. Gets paid for Shabbos as well. Lefikach, and therefore Achai Shabbos alav, responsibility of Shabbos is on him. Now, one of the cases here was he's watching grain. Now, my love, or maybe it's the grain, maybe it's the fact that it's hektish. My love, is it not? L'shalim. And when he said he's responsible, it means he has to pay. We're seeing that you're telling me that a Shemer Sachar doesn't have to pay. Is not responsible for hektish or for land or for, here we're seeing that for hektish items, possibly if the grain is considered land. So then, he does have to pay for it. Gemara says, no, that's not what we mean that he's responsible. We mean that he's responsible because he won't get his own salary. Not that he has to pay for the item that gets ruined, but he won't get his own salary if something happens, right? So it still is consistent with our Mishnah. Our Mishnah says that is not responsible for damages for stolen or lost for the item. And here we're saying also he's not responsible for stolen loss. It's just that he doesn't get his paycheck. Well, Gemara says, if that's the case, Reisha Diktani, when it taught in the beginning of when it taught in that Mishnah, that if he's not paid, if he's getting paid by the day, right, day by day, he gets his every day he makes $5. Well, then he can't get paid the $5 for Shabbos because he's getting paid $5 a day. And then what happens is that he doesn't have responsibility on Shabbos. Achinami, do you mean to say the lahafsid schare? Do you mean to say that ein achraya Shabbos alav, that he doesn't have responsibility on Shabbos, means that if something happens on Shabbos, he won't get his $5 for Shabbos? But if that's the case, he doesn't get it anyway. So what does it mean? You lose the salary that you don't get? It must mean that you're not responsible for the actual item. Not responsible for the actual item means that if he is responsible for the item, then he is responsible to pay for the item, which is not the way we just explained it. We just explained that he doesn't get the payment for his watching. Ishtik. Rab is quiet. Ooh. Rabbi Yosef asked him a strong question. We see from this Mishnah that Hashem Sacha does pay for hektish items, and our Mishnah says that Hashem Sacha doesn't pay for hektish. Amalei, Rabbi says to me, what about you? Do you know the answer? Amalei, Hachi Amar Rav Sheshas, so says Rav Sheshas. Shekana miyadei. Talking about a special case where the person accepted responsibility. Of course, if he accepts it on himself, you could make up any agreement. Here, he doesn't have to pay. He doesn't have the responsibility. But if he made up that he will be responsible, then he is responsible. He made a kinyan to make him responsible. And so Rabbi Yechon also says the same thing, that they made a kinyan that makes him responsible. So it's a special arrangement that they had that he's going to be responsible.
Even though he's not paid a salary for that, right? So it's volunteer.
He is paid the salary
for the Shabbos.
Yeah, and therefore he's responsible. But even though it's hektish, and normally a shomer sachar only has to guard, only is responsible for items that belong to his fellow, but not the hektish. He doesn't have the responsibility, but here he does.
Because he takes it on.
But he took it on specifically.
He's also paid for it.
Yeah, but the paid part that we worked out to make that mutter, to make it allowed, the paid part, because he's getting paid for the whole week.
For 7 years.
For the 7 years. And now the issue is, but does he have the responsibility of the level of Hashem Sachar when it comes to hektish? We had verses before that exclude hektish from that. So we're saying when we accepted it specifically, so that's why. Now, but an opinion in the Mishnah, opinion of Reb Shimon that says that not all hektish is exempt. It depends. Reb Shimon, according to Reb Shimon Bar Yochai, says Reb Shimon says Kachim Shechai Bachar Yusan, if he's responsible for them to make it to the temple. Remember the case? That makes him responsible if he accepts on himself to bring a sacrifice. And then he designates the sacrifice that he's going to bring. So if the sacrifice gets lost, he's still responsible to replace it. So it's called like davar agayrim lamaman. This causes a loss. The other case was kachim that he's not chayev and he's not responsible for them. Is if instead of accepting on himself to bring a sacrifice, he accepts on himself to bring this animal. If this animal gets lost, he doesn't have to replace it. I only accepted that animal. Okay. Tani Tana Kamid Rabbi Yitzchak bar Abba. Tana taught in front of Rabbi Yitzchak bar Abba. Kachim shechayev b'achar yusan chayev. If sacrifices that a person is responsible for them, then he's chayev. Okay, fine, because that's considered his money. Now the verse that he brings for this is a little bit odd. He says, "B'Hashem v'kichesh." He says, because in the verse itself, I don't have the psukim here. Don't get me the chumash. Yeah. Yeah, this is when he swears falsely.
Yeah.
Where is it exactly? By Yikra?
A chafal.
Yeah. Is that what you have? Chapter 5, verse 21 says, Hashem spoke to Moshe saying, person sins and acts deceitfully against God by making a false denial to his fellow concerning an item deposited for safekeeping, cash in hand, or by robbery, or he withheld wages from his fellow, or he found a lost article and then he denied it, and swore falsely. In any of these cases where a man might sin, what should happen? Feels he sinned and is guilty, should return the article which he had been robbed of, the funds which he had held, or the manner which had been. Okay, now it says the words go like this: Nefesh kisech demala by mal ba'Hashem. He transgresses against God. V'kichish ba'misay, and denies to his fellow. So we always learn this. V'kichish ba'misay. That means it's only if he denies to his fellow. So it comes along. This Tana in front of Rabbi Yitzchak Barabi says no, he's going to be chayiv over here because it adds the word Hashem in, which means even though it's Kodshim, he's still going to be chayiv. Now Hashem is going on the last clause. It says Mola Mal B'Hashem, but he says B'Hashem B'Kichesh, so that's why he's going to be chayiv. She'ein chayiv b'achar yusan, but if he's not responsible for them, then he's going to be pater. Shani kayer behem b'misa v'kichesh. Because we call it ba'misai, against his fellow, and he denies it. It's going to be pater. So the Rabbi Yitzchak Barabba says, "Amalei klapilaya." Where is this headed? It means where? How do they translate klapilaya? Which way is this headed? That means what you're saying doesn't seem to fit. Ibcha mistaber, it should be exactly the opposite, which means that if it's not chayav b'achrayas, that means it belongs to Hashem. So then you're not chayev b'achrayas, belongs to Hashem, then you should be exempt. That shouldn't be ba'misei v'kichesh. Yeah, the psukim over here are coming out backwards. The one that you're less responsible for is more belonging to Hashem. The one that you're more responsible for is more belonging to you. So why, when it says the one that you're responsible for, does it say Ba'Hashem, and the one that you're not responsible for says Ba'Misa? Right. Should be the opposite. Amarle Ismaya, he says, well, what should I erase this from the Amarle? He says, like, don't erase it. Hachikamer, this is how it's supposed to go. Kodshim shechayev b'achriyusan. If it's something that you're responsible for, chayev, something that you're responsible, then you are responsible for. A chayev over here means that if you overcharge or something, there is a na or anything like that. This rabu may b'Hashem akichesh, because even though it's hektish, but there is a certain type of hektish that gets included because it says b'Hashem b'kichesh. We have a pasuk over here that includes hektish. But if it's not, you're not responsible for it because it's totally belonging to Hashem, then pater, then he's exempt from those laws of Ainah and etc. The imit because it's excluded, because it says only your fellow. So in other words, because we have an inclusion and an exclusion, we're going to include if you're responsible for it, and we're going to exclude if you're not responsible for it. And we're going to learn that from the Ba'misa v'kichesh. So it's not that the word Ba'misa v'kichesh tells that to me. Ba'misa v'kichesh excludes it.
I see.
That's what shifted between the Havamin and the Maskana. Okay. Rabbi Yehuda said in the Mishnah, when it comes to these specific items, There's no such thing as overcharging, as price fraud. So what are these things? A sefer Torah, a pearl, or an animal. Tanya was taught in a brayser. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, "Afamecha sefer Torah in layina." Someone that tells us sefer Torah, there's no price fraud. Because you can't put a limit on its value. There's no price fraud over there as well. Why? Because a person maybe was willing to pay extra for this pearl because he has another pearl that he's using for the other earring, and he wants to have a matching pair. So to him, it's worth much more. Maybe in the settings of whatever it is, the jewelry, he needs to have exactly that piece. So even though it doesn't have the value, but to him it does, because he wants it to match with something. Or maybe there's an animal that he needs another animal to match it, because you want to put the similar type animals together and under the same yoke, so they could work in unison. Well, Amrullah, they said to him, that could apply to everything. Could be every, a person wants a tie to match a suit. He wants a thing to match his thing, whatever. It could be anything. A vase, a jug. When you have another one, whatever it is. Real estate was not. Right. Right. My answer is Rabbi Yehuda. What was Rabbi Yehuda thinking? These things are expensive or they're important, and therefore he wants to specifically to have these a match for these. And that's why there's no way on. By these other things, okay, nishkafela. You have a vase, you want another matching vase for the other windowsill, so you'll get a different set. Okay. Avad kama. How much is considered that there's no way now? How far could this go? Amar Meimarat kadei demayim. Meimer says until double the price. Tanya Rabbi ben B'Sei Raim Rafa Meicher Sus B'Sayev Echatitem B'Milchama In Lameinav Tishish B'M Chayin Nefesh. Rabbi ben B'Sei says it's not Rabbi Yehuda that we had before. Rabbi Yehuda that we had before is Rabbi Yehuda Rabbi Loi, the student of Rabbi Akiva. This is Rabbi ben B'Sei. He adds in that a horse or a sword or a shield during wartime, that's also the pay any price because that's important for a person's life. Tell us to the gun salesman. Okay. Right. Shem Shaina b'Mekach u'Memkar. This is a famous Mishnah. Just like there's Zaina, there's price fraud. What's the word that they use? Not price fraud.
Exploitation.
Exploitation. When it comes to business, kachina b'dvarim, there's also exploitation when it comes to words. Person shouldn't say to his fellow, how much does this cost? He doesn't even want to buy it. He got his hopes up, and then you walk into a store, you're just window shopping.
That's why.
If someone is a Baal Tshuva, he's not supposed to tell him, remember what you used to do. Ben Gerim, he's the son of converts. You shouldn't tell him, remember what your father would do. It says a convert, you shouldn't oppress or exploit or oppress, mistreat or oppress. Yeah, big interesting thing. Aish.com, they have like interesting thing. One of them was a child of a Nazi that converted, and very interesting interview. No, it was just explaining like how she was feeling. I think it was a she.
It was a big thing when they said all of these friends.
I was talking about with Kara.
Correct. It doesn't go back to Yaakov.
With Yisrael. Oh,
Yisrael. But it's with Korach, it doesn't go back to
Fattened calves.
fattened calves. Yeah. Well, how do you want to answer that? I think over there, what it's saying is that the people were saying that Pinchas, right? Pinchas killed the people were saying that, which was something that they weren't allowed to do. That's not a question. That's saying that's an example of what you're not allowed to do. But it doesn't mean that that's acceptable, right? But there was an example that the people were saying, look at what Pinchas is doing. He's a grandson of so-and-so that was so terrible. And then the Torah comes and says that you shouldn't say that because he did it with the right intentions, right? Okay. Tanarabana was taught in the Brisa Lisenovish Samisai. A person should not mistreat his fellow. By Nasdvarim Makasam Medaber, it's talking about mistreating with words. Ataim or by Nasdvarim, you say it's talking about words. Ainal by Nas Mamen. Maybe it's referring to money. You shouldn't mistreat him with money. When it's pasuk says that when you'll purchase something, when you'll sell or purchase something from your fellow, we already spoke about mistreating with money. Money so what I mean that a person should not mistreat his fellow. By Nas is talking about with words. What's an example of this? Maya Balchuba. Person is a returning. Al Yemala, you shouldn't say is remember what you used to do. Maya Ben Gerim, if he's the son of converts, Al Yemala is remember what your fathers used to do. Imaya Gerabal my Torah, let's say he's a convert himself, he's coming to learn Torah. Al Yemala, you shouldn't say to him, Peshach on the veils of Shefus Kachim Masan Balal my Torah, Shnemmer Gura, a mouth that used to eat non-kosher food is now coming to say words of Torah that was said by the all-powerful, by Hashem. If a person is suffering, he's sick. He's either suffering or he's sick. Let's say his family, his children is dying. You shouldn't say to him the way Eiv's friend said to Eiv. It says, I can't pronounce these words. Kislasecha, tikvascha, v'taim derechecha, secharna mihu naki avad. Did I get it right? So, is your fear not your protection somehow? Your confidence. Your hope in Hashem, is that not your to straighten your path? So, please remember, is there ever an innocent person that perished? Basically, they're telling him that obviously all of your Yiras Hashem was all for yourself, and the fact that you had hope in Hashem, that was just to make your life easier. And we see from this, because the fact that you're suffering means that you're a sinner. That's how Eiv's friends. Yeah, it was harsh. If there were, I think, donkey drivers that were seeking grain from him, you shouldn't tell them, go to so and so, he sells grain. Turns out, and you know that he never sold grain in his life. Misleading. Rabbi Yehuda Aimer, Afli Yitlein of Alamecha Shoshen Leidamin. You shouldn't set your eyes on an item when you don't have money to buy it. The person thinks that he's making a sale, could be losing another customer at the same time as well. But that's not the issue. The issue is that you're getting his hopes up. You're getting his hopes up, and you don't have money anyway.
So saying you're making him suffer.
Right.
Expecting you to buy it.
Right.
What about the reverse, where the guy walks in, he's poorly dressed, the salesman says he's a poor guy and he wants to buy a Mercedes. Turns out he's a multimillionaire.
Yeah.
I have other customers, and puts him down.
Yeah.
That's not, I know. It's not misleading him in any way. Treating him well. Not giving him false information.
Right, but it's the reverse. Here it's not nice. Not yeshivish.
Yeah, it's more than
Yeah.
So the poor guy, came into a restaurant. Like he was treated very bad by the manager and waitress, treats him very nice. Plus he said that he was gonna pay on everything. So he ended up paying. Go back, and called this poor guy was actually the owner of the restaurant. He fired the manager, put the waitress back into management. He comes every year to do
That's a
check
great
on the
story.
people, see how
Wow.
they treat them.
That's a great story. You follow, measure? Okay. So,
I think it actually even happened. It's a
Oh, yeah?
recorded story. Yeah.
what is it? Oh, undercover boss. Okay. And someone that calls up his office wants to hear how the secretaries
answer.
answer. I don't hear you smiling.
This is exactly how Shlomo Melech used to talk. He used to dress out like a pauper and go out to the out
Yeah.
to the out of the his
Okay.
kingdom to find out what's going on.
I'm Rabbi Yechon, yeah. I'm Rabbi Yechon, yeah. Oh, I'm sorry, I skipped one line. Now, this Brisa is adding in one point. It says over here, you should fear God. And the reason why it says you should fear God is because this is something that the only person that knows if he's doing this intentionally or not is the person himself. So that's why whenever something is given over to your own heart, your own intention, it says you should fear God because Hashem knows. I'm Rabbi Yechon ben Yochai. Rabbi Yechon, it says neighbor of Shimon ben Yochai. Gadol einas dvarim einas mammon. It's worse to oppress someone with words than to exploit his money. Right? When it comes to words, it says you should fear God. Rabbi Lazar is a Rabbi Yechanan's friend. It says another reason. He said because this one is affecting his body, this one is affecting his money, which is more external to him. Shmuel bar Nachmani Amar Shmuel bar Nachmani says money you could return, but the mistreatment with words you can't return.
So how do you tikkun that?
Yeah.
Ooh.
Tani Tana Kamed Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak. It's very hard. A student taught in front of Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak. Kalam Albem Pnei Chaver Barabim. Anyone that embarrasses his fellow in public, it's as if he murdered him, spilled blood. Amalei Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak says to him, Shaper Kamre. It's good what you're saying. The Chazina does because we see actually that the blood drains, the redness drains, and white comes. I think it means first he turns red. Then afterwards, after the red goes away, it turns white. Yeah. Taisva says this that the red comes red first is because the blood is gathering to run away. Okay. Amalei Abayler Rav Dimi. Abaya says to Rav Dimi. Rav Dimi was the traveler. So Abaya asks him, "B'marav of my Zahiri, what are they careful about in Eretz Yisrael? What chumras do they have in Israel? What new chumras this year for Pesach?" Amalei Ba'achrei Ape said they're very careful about not embarrassing someone. That's what they're careful about in Israel. Rabbi Chanina. Rabbi Chanina was the sage in Israel, a student of Rabbi. Chanina Bar Chama was his name. He says, "Hakol yardim leGehenim chutz mishleisha." Everyone goes down to Gehenim except for 3. Kol sal kadaita. Everyone goes to Gehenim. Aleim hakol yardim leGehenim oilim chutz mishleisha. She yardim bein oilim. Whoever does go to Gehenim, not everyone, but whoever does, they can come out of Gehenim except for 3 that can't come out. And those are Abal Eishasish, someone that lives with a married woman. Malvin Pnei Chaver Barabim, someone that embarrasses his fellow in public. Someone that makes up a name for his friend, makes a nickname for him. probably that he doesn't like, right? One second, if you're giving him a name, so that's it's embarrassing him. My answer is even though he's used to being called that, nevertheless it's still not allowed. I have this in the school often. People call each other like names that they had, but for years they had the name, the nicknames of. It's like a shortened version of the last name or something. They say, does he mind that? I said, no, everyone does. Everyone, that's what we call it.
It's derogatory.
Could be derogatory, could be not, but it's just not his name.
Right, we call a person Shuki.
Right.
But Shuki,
Right. No, so if it's a name that has to be his choice of names, that's the thing. We don't make names for people. So that's now your name.
In order for us to do that, we need to ask him if he's okay.
Right.
And to be sure.
Right.
Right?
Exactly.
They do that with me all the time. They say professor. It's not nice. So they don't ask me because no one ever called me professor until I came here to this place.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So
you don't like it?
I apologize.
I apologize.
So sorry.
I take it back.
But no one says I take it back. Well,
I do.
that.
I'm saying
you
that.
don't
We're saying
like
it
it,
now.
right?
I don't like it at all.
And
I have a name.
So how come you
I don't call you Mr. Barber or
But people call me
Torah,
rabbi
right?
all the time. They call you rabbi. I'm my chef.
Oh, you're a real rabbi.
That's right. You're a
You're a
professor.
professor.
A real professor.
Yeah, you're a real
Forgot.
professor.
Yeah, but for example, whenever there's a question, how do you pronounce this? Oh, professor, like you're supposed to know what kind of root this tree has, right?
This is true.
If you're the rabbi, you're supposed
So
to know.
what are we supposed to do?
We have to work this out after the share.
Thank you. Let's go.
I'm a Rabbi Bar Bachana, I'm Rabbi Yechanan. Dr. Stein's going to come in and give us a lesson.
What about a student is embarrassed? Like you ask a student a question,
Yeah.
and he turns red.
Big
He doesn't know
problem.
the
My
answer.
name is Rennie. My name is Rennie, not Dr. Stein.
Ah,
It's
Okay.
rabbi to you.
We're in trouble now. Okay. Yeah.
he's listening.
This is a problem for students. It is a problem.
Yeah.
But
Sorry, Rafael Michael. From now on, Rafael Michael. Perfect.
Okay.
Wants to be called Reform Call.
So Rabbi Bar Bachana says the name of Rabbi Yechanan, Noach le'ladam shi'avi al safek yeshasish, al yalbim pnei chaver barabim. It's better for a person to live with a married woman, a doubtful married woman, rather than to embarrass someone in public, even though we know how serious that sin is. But nevertheless, embarrassing someone is worse. Minole, where do we know that? Where are you saying this from? Mididarish Rabba, because Rabba taught. Darish Rabba taught. Maidik said, what's the meaning of the verse in Tillim? It says, Bitzali Samch Benesfu Karov Leidamu. Bitzali is translated like this. Bitzali is my rib. Even as at Selah, at the side, maybe. Whatever it means his wife. They spoke about my wife. Samchu, they were happy. Nesfu, they gathered. Karu, they tore me, v'leidamu, and they didn't find blood. Yes, because he was embarrassed. Not to embarrass someone. Oh, not to, yeah, both of them, actually. We'll see in a moment. We'll see, it's coming up. David says in front of Hashem, Rabbeinu Shalom, Master of the world, it's revealed to you that if they would tear my skin, my flesh, my blood wouldn't come to the ground. Is that because he was embarrassed, and therefore the blood left? Is that the meaning of that?
Due to excessive fasting.
Oh, due to excessive fasting.
That's why there's no blood.
More than one day, probably.
Yeah. And not only that, even when I'm studying Torah, there's very difficult concepts in the Torah, the Goyim and all this, so like the hardest Masechtas. They say to me, David, they say someone that lives with a married woman, what's the punishment? They come and they ask me, to remind me, David is saying. And I answer them, I tell them the answer, that his death penalty is with strangulation. But he does have a life in the world to come. But someone that embarrasses someone doesn't have the world to come. Well, Amar Marzuchev, they're embarrassing him because he lived with Bathsheba, and so they're trying to remind him of that sin that he did. Now,
But a different person.
It was worse.
what they were doing was worse than
What he did.
What he did. Now, there's a whole discussion over here. Why is it a suffocation if she was married? And the commentators here are saying that they would write a divorce document to a soldier would write a divorce document to his wife before they go out. No, Rashi says that it has to do with Yibam. Yeah, why would they write that document? So that if they would die in battle, the wife shouldn't have to marry the brother of the husband of the deceased. Taisha says it doesn't have to do with that. It doesn't have to do with Yibam. It has to do with just so we should know where the person is. If you can't find the person or he dies in battle, he's lost, a captive or something like that, you don't know if he's alive or dead. The wife is going to be in a guna. Yeah. So they would write this document. And so therefore it's a doubt. We're considering it a doubt. The whole discussion.
Put them purposely in the front line, right?
Sorry?
He was put in the front line.
He was put, then afterwards he was put in the front line to die, right?
Was it a doubt because at the time that it happened, it wasn't confirmed that he was dead?
He was alive when it happened, actually. He came back afterwards. And then he was sent out to the front lines. For you. Yeah, but because they write this document that if they die in battle, it goes back, it's a retroactive divorce, it goes back to the original. So then that's they're explaining.
You can give a get to your wife if you're dead also.
Right. It's kind of hard.
But that's why it was retracted.
Yeah, usually doesn't work.
It's retroactive. That's what they're saying. Amar Zutra Bar Tuvia Amar Rav Amrilam Rav Chana Bar Biznam Rav Shimon Chasida Amrilam Rav Yechanan Shimon Ben Yochai. A lot of people taking credit for this statement. Nayach Leili Adam. It's said in different names because maybe many said it. Maybe they were close and they said it over. And it's better for a person to throw himself into a burning burning furnace, not to embarrass his fellow in public. How do you know this? Minale, where do you know this? Mitamar, we learn this from Tamar. The Ksiv, because it says by her, he would say she's being taken out to be burnt. And she sends to her father-in-law, the person that these items belong to is the one that made me pregnant. Amar Rav Chinana, so she was ready to die if he didn't want to admit. Amar Rav Chinana, Breder Ravidi, the son of Ravidi, Rav Chanina, maybe. What's the meaning of the pasuk? You should not oppress your fellow. You should not mistreat him. Your fellow that keeps the Torah, you shouldn't oppress. Sounds like this law only applies to observant Jews. Amar Rav says, person should be very careful not to mistreat his wife, because her tears are very close, are frequent, and so therefore her mistreatment is very, very easy. Okay. Right. Right. Yeah. It doesn't apply today, but yeah. Today people don't because they haven't studied. Most of them.
So you don't have to be careful about treating your wife.
I think you didn't read that right.
Yeah,
Read that again. You said the comment before was that it's only someone that's observant. The next comment is a person should be extra careful about his wife to treat her properly.
She cries easily.
That's right. She cries easily. Rabbi Lazar, it's interesting who said that was Rav. The find this very interesting because Rav, Gemara says that Rav, his wife mistreated him. And he's the one that says you have to be careful not to mistreat your wife. You follow this? But Rav, his wife his wife wasn't good to him.
Right.
And Rav is the one that's making a statement about the wife.
He figures he got a wife because he deserves such a wife.
No, he said his son asked him, "Why don't you divorce her?" He said, "Well, she keeps me from sin and she raises the children." But was that Rav or Abchia? But both, I think they were nephew. Both of them, I think, had difficult wives. Yeah, whatever he would ask for, she would do the opposite.
Oh, so
Yeah, remember that Gemara where he said it was in the Dharam? Where was it?
Right.
He said, I think it was in the Dharam. He said, "Oh, your wife, your mother's getting good, getting better. She's making me the food that I want." And the son said, "No, I've been telling her the opposite so that she should make the opposite." So Rav says, "No, midvar, you should keep your tongue away from falsehood."
Well, for Shalom Bayis, I think
Oh, maybe.
he's okay.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, that's a good point. Amar Rabbi Lazar says, "Miyam shenecher Beis Hamikdash, from the time the Beis Hamikdash was destroyed, ninalu shari tefillah, the gates of prayer have been closed. Shenemar gamki ezak v'ashaveya shasam tefilasi." Even when I cry out, my prayer has been blocked. Af pisha shari tefillah ninalu, but even though the gates of prayer were blocked, shari demayis lay ninalu, but the crying was not blocked. Shenemar, it says in the pasuk, "Shema tefilasi Hashem v'shavasi azina al damasi al
It's not
tefra."
crying, it's the gates of
Tears. Hashem listens to my prayer. He hears my cry, and he's not silent from my tears. He will not be silent. Amar Rav, kol ha'elech batzas ishta nefel b'gehenim. There was this, who was it? It was a wealthy man. One of the Rebbes was a wealthy, Shmelka. I forgot who it was. It's going to come to me. But he went to, no, it's not in here. He went to,
That's coming.
no, there was this, after Yom Kippur, the Talmidim of the Chayza would go to the Chayza and he would tell them,
future.
he would tell them what Hashem decided for them that year.
And the wife overheard it.
No,
There was a whole
that's
mindset
something
about
else. That's a Gemara Brachas or something.
it. Yeah, and she would go from the best chorus.
But so this Rebbe, they told him that he's going to have a terrible year. He's going to, anyway. It turns out that he had health problems. He spent all his money on doctor bills. He lost everything, and he was in a hotel. And they knocked on the door, and they said, "Would you like?" He didn't have any money to pay. They said, "Would you like goose or would you like meat for lunch or something?" So he started crying, and then he gets another knock, and he said, "Someone wants to do business with you. Will you work for them?" He said, "Only if I'm a partner, not if I'm working." So afterwards, he made a lot of money back. He went back to the Chayz and he told them, I made money. This year it wasn't as like you said. The Chayz said I wasn't able to see the tears. I only saw without the tears." Yeah. Okay.
It's a Shlomo story
Oh yeah.
without the tears part. He refuses the part. He says the lady who wants to hire him is the richest person in Poland.
Right.
And she has forests. And he refuses to be a employee. He says, "I want a partnership." She says, "Okay, I'll make you a partner." So when he sees the choser, when he comes back, he says, he says, "I saw all that. How come you refused it? Would you have the chutzpah to do that?" He says, "You taught us that." He said, "When the gates of heaven are open a little bit, you should push them open further."
Uh-huh.
And that's
Very
what he
nice.
did.
Yeah. Okay, so now it says, "Amar Rav, kol ha'elech batzas ishtei nefel b'gehenim." Anyone that follows his wife's advice falls into to Gehenim. Shenemar rak leihaya ka'achav. Wasn't anyone like Achav that his wife Izefel convinced him to do bad. She convinced him because of that field that belonged to what was his name, Naval? No, what was his name, Naval? And then they got rid of them. They made this fake trial, and they ended up.
Did he know better?
You should have. You should have known better. Amalei Rav Papa la Abaya. Rav Papa says to Abaya. Rav Papa is a student of Abaya. Amri Yenshi, what are you saying? The people say there's an expression. Itzach gutza. If your wife is short, gachen v'tilchishla. You should kneel down and you should bend down and listen to her. Tilchishla sounds like you should whisper to her, but it basically means that you should be listening to her. So it's like kasha. It depends if it's in worldly matters or matters of the house. I guess in matters of the house, you listen to her, but in matters of the world, like who you're going to vote for, that you don't listen to. Maybe listen achrina, right? Isn't that what they say? The arrangement
is secret, so.
But the arrangement for this happy marriage was she makes all the small decisions, I make all the big decisions. I decide who we're going to vote for, and she decides what, everything else. Okay, listen, matters of heaven, you don't listen to your wife. I don't know if that's applies today. Today the women are more from Dalma, matters of the world. Is probably talking about in days before the women would study Torah. Amar Rav Chizda. Rav Chizda says, all the gates are closed or can get locked except for the gates of mistreatment. Hashem is standing on the wall that's made with a plumb line. That means a wall that's made straight. And what is Anach? Anach is Ainah. Anach, and he has it in his hand. He has a plumb line, which is referring to the Ainah that he holds on to, the mistreatment, the exploitation. Rabbi Lazar, bad treatment. Rabbi Lazar says, right. Right, exactly. Very good. Rabbi Lazar says, "Akol nifra b'dei shliach chutz meinash nem Rabbi Anach." Hashem does his retribution through a messenger, except for when it comes to Ainah, he does it himself. Says it's in his own hand as Ainah. Bavo says, "Gimel eina parged ninol b'fneim." The curtain doesn't close in front of these three. Ainah, Gezel, v'Avodah Zarah. Someone is mistreated, or someone is robbed, or someone worships Avodah Zarah. So I know if someone is wrong. Right. I know the Ksiv Biadi Anach in his hand. It means there's no curtain, it's Hashem himself. Gezel the Ksiv Chamas B'Shoid Yishma Ba Al Panai Tamid.
Directly.
Yeah. Will always be heard. This sort of shade is to plunder. The nation is angering me constantly. Okay, it's always in front of him. Rav Yehuda. Rav Yehuda says, person should always have food in his house, because fights and quarrels in the house is because there's not enough food. He puts on his borders peace, and the fat of the wheat satisfies him. Rav Papa says, this is what people say. It's interesting that Rav Yehuda was very poor, and Rav Yehuda actually didn't have food. No, that was Rabbi Yehuda, wrong person. That was Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Loi was poor. This is Rav Yehuda. This is Rabbi Yehuda by Yecheskel. It's not the same person. Rav Papa says, that is what people say. Mishalim Sari Mikada, when there's no barley left, which is an animal food. Poor people would eat barley. When there's no barley left in the jug, Nakish Vasi Tigru Bebesa, then quarrels come and knock at the door. Yeah. Amar Rav Chinan Bar Papa. Rav Chinan Bar Papa says, "Leilam Yadam Zar B'Tfua B'Tech Beiser Shlina Kusol Dalim El Alis Kitfua." The people were only considered poor because of matters of grain. Shneimar Vayim Zeri Yisrael Ksiv Vayachanu Aleim V'Goyim Ksiv Vayidal Yisrael Ma'id Midian. The Jewish people became very poor.
Yeah.
What is it? You tell me.
Looks like a color.
Yeah, Zara Yisrael. And by Yidal Yisrael Yidal means they became poor. And the reason is because they didn't have the grain. Amrab Chelbai says, person should always be careful with his wife's honor. The blessing comes to the house because of his wife. Shenemar, as it says, Avram Hetiv Ba'avura, that Avram, they were very good to him because of her, when he came out of Egypt, right? V'hainu damalu Rava l'bnei Mechuzah. Rava told the people of Mechuzah, that's where Rava lived. You should honor your wives, so that you should become wealthy. Okay.
I had a friend who said, the town of Providence, it's a Providence story, right? She said she wasn't Jewish. She said, you notice all these Jewish men, they treat their wives, they give them a lot of them, the Italian men. So she was saying really the honor, the wealth of the man is due to the honor they give their wives.
Right.
Not the verse.
Right.
When I'm wealthy, I'll buy you something. He never becomes wealthy, so
right. I think it says he's supposed to borrow money. Tanan Hassam. Start over there. Chatchu Cholias Nasan Chol Ben Cholia Lecholia. Mishnah in Kalim that if they made an oven out of different parts between the sections, it was different sections. Between the sections, they put sand. So normally an oven was made like a big pot, and they put the coals on the bottom, and they could cook either on the stove or they would put things on the side of the top. Well, this was made out of like pieces that were put together, and then they would plaster it. But the problem is that in between the pieces, they put sand. Rabbi Elazar says that this is considered something that's built, and it's not considered a vessel, and so therefore it's not Mekabel Tama. The Chum say no, it is Mekabel Tama, and therefore anything that if there's impurity in this oven, so the oven is considered a vessel, becomes Tame. No, then where a vessel becomes Tame from something going inside it, and everything else inside it also becomes Tame. This is the oven of the snake. My achna, what do you mean the snake? Amar Rav Yudah Shmuel, Rav Yudah says name Shmuel shekifu dvarim kachna zu v'tamu, because they surrounded it with matters, with things like a snake puts its head, its mouth is open to its tail. It could surround something. So that's how much they went around this to make it impure. Tana was taught in a brayse by Siyam Heshiv Rabbi Eliezer culture was Shabbalam Lekiblo Imenu. So Machlekes Rabbi Eliezer and the Chachamim. Rabbi Eliezer answered every question, but they refused to accept it. Amalahem, he said to them, "Malacha k'maisi charav zeyechiach." The halachas like me, let this carob tree prove. It must have been a carob tree outside. It says nekar charav m'kamei amma. The carob tree got uprooted from the ground 100 amas. It just lifted up, and
Talking about magicians
here. Yeah. Or some say it was 400 amas. You can't bring a proof just from that.
Where did he go? Where did he go?
Where did the carob tree go?
Yeah.
Lifted up in the air, moved to the roots, the dirt falling. Right. Exactly. Chazav Amalem in Malacha Kamaisi Amasamayim Yechichu. So he says, okay, if I'm correct, so the stream of water should prove that I'm correct. Chazav Amasamayim Lachareim, the stream of water usually flows downward. It started to flow upward. So Chazav Amalem Evi and Raim Amasim. We can't prove from the stream of water. Chazav Amalem in Malacha Kamaisi Kaisa Beis Medrash Yechichu. Let the walls of the Beis Medrash prove. So Hatu Kaisa Beis Medrash Lipo, the walls started to cave in, to collapse. Garbem Rabbi Yeshua screamed at them, Amalem, just because these Torah sages, scholars, are fighting one another in halacha, what are you mixing in? This has nothing to do with you. They didn't collapse because Rabbi Yeshua is honor of but they didn't stand up. Rabbi Eliezer, because of the honor of Rabbi Eliezer. They're still
an incredible tourist
attraction. Yeah.
It's a tourist attraction. Of the special, it's a building that has the walls like this. What was that?
Oh,
Rabbi Eliezer.
it was a state leaving. State straight out.
It became a state park.
Yeah. Yeah.
Rav, this is in Israel. So what happens next? Chazav Amalem, he then says to them, let the heavens prove that I'm correct. Yatsa Baskal Vamra, the heavenly voice comes out and says, what are you doing with Rabbi Eliezer? The Allah is always like him in every place. Amad Rabbi Shua, Raglav Rabbi Shua stood up, Amar, and he says, Leba Shamayim, the Torah is not in the heavens.
Yes, yeah.
My Leba Shamayim, what does it mean that it's not in the heavens? Rabbi Yirmiyah explains, once the Torah was given at Har Sinai, you have to follow the rules of the Torah. Set the rules, and the rules are in place. Taisus over here, it's a famous Taisus. Just 1 second, we pass like Beis Hillel, because there was a Baskel that came out that said we pass like Beis Hillel. And now Rabbi Yeshua is saying we don't pass like the Baskel.
Mm-hmm. It says,
following the guidelines.
Exactly. There are certain guidelines how halach works, and one of them is not with Baskel.
By majority.
So by Beis Hillel was the majority. The only reason why we wouldn't have gone like Beis Hillel was because Beis Shammai was more sharper. But because the Baskel is supporting the halacha over there that you should follow Beis Hillel, which is the majority. Here the Baskel is against the majority. That's one answer. Okay, well, Ashkechei Reb Nassan Le'Elio, Reb Nassan met Elio. Amalei, Mayavid Kutshbricha B'Shaita. What was Hashem doing at that moment? Amalei Kachayach. Hashem was laughing. Nitzchuni b'ni. Says, you have been victorious, my son. Referring to, I guess, Rabbi Yeshua, and what he was saying that
it's not about
that it doesn't follow the heavens. What's the actual halacha over here? Is it tamei or tahor?
well, it's going to be the time.
It's tamei.
Ceramic, right?
Yeah, that is considered ceramic. Amru, they said that day, if you call Tara Shatir Rabbi Eliezer from Beish all of the everything that Rabbi Eliezer said that was pure, they burnt it in fire, and they gathered and they put him into cherem.
Whoa.
Yeah. Amru, they said, who's going to go and tell him that he's in cherem?
Who's brave?
So Amalem Rabbi Akiva says, I'll go. Maybe someone that's not appropriate is going to go. And it's going to come out, he's going to destroy the world. Ma'aser Rabbi Akiva, what does Rabbi Akiva do? Lava shchayrim, puts on dark clothes. When he covers his head with dark something, puts on a black hat. puts on a black shawl, scarf. V'yeshev lefanav brachik arba amas. He sits 4 cubits away. Amalei Rabbi Elazar. Rabbi Elazar says, Akiva, mayem mayim. What's different today than every day? Amalei Rabbi k'meduma shechaverim b'delim emcha. Says Rabbi, it appears that your friends are separating themselves from you. Afukar begadav, he tears his clothing as well. V'chalas minalav, he takes off his shoes. V'nishmat, he slips out from the chair. V'yashav ala karka, sits on the ground. Zolgain of Demais, his eyes are flowing with tears. Laka ha'ilam, the world was smitten. Shlish b'seisim, 1/3 of with the olives. I guess the olives, like rotted or something. Shlish b'chitim, 1/3 of the wheat. Shlish b'seirim, and 1/3 of the barley. Some say that even the dough that a woman was making at that point spoiled. Tana thought, it was a great plague that day. So Rabbi Eliezer Nisraf. Anywhere where Rabbi Eliezer put his eyes would burn up.
Is this Rabbi Eliezer, son of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai?
This is Rabbi Eliezer ben Horkenes. Teacher of Rabbi Akiva. After Rabbi Gamliel Hayabab Svina, Rabbi Gamliel was on a boat at this time. It was like a tidal wave came to drown him. Says apparently this is coming because of Rabbi Elazar ben Horkenes. Amar al Raglav, he stood on his feet. He said, Rabbeinu Shleilam, Master of the world. I didn't do this for my own honor. I didn't do it for the honor of my father's house. I did it for your honor, so that we shouldn't have arguments amongst the Jewish people, because the Jewish people could have been divided into two religions. It would be those that follow Rabbi Eliezer and those that don't. That was a concern that there won't be one group. Nachayam Yizafai, the sea settled. Okay, Ema Shalom, the Bissa de Rabbi Eliezer, Achti de Ram Gamliel Hava. Rabbi Eliezer's wife, her name was Ema Shalom. She was the sister of Rabbi Gamliel. From that story and onward, part of the davening is you put out your head down on your arm. It's called Nefilas Apayim, part of Tachnan. She refused to let Rabbi Eliezer say Nefilas Apayim. There was this one day, Reishi Archav, it was Rosh Chodesh.
Why didn't she let him do that?
See in a second. Was Rosh Chodesh. And she was confused between if it was a full month or not a full month. So she thought that he's not going to say Tachman, and he did. Ikadamri, some say, Asa Anya V'Kaya Bava. A poor person came and stood by the door. Apikale Rifta, she went to give him some bread. Ashkachte Dinafal Alapi, she came back, she sees that he had fallen on his face, which is the Tachman. Amalei, she says to him, Kum, get up, Katlas Lachi, you're killing my brother. If he would get so intense in prayer. So she was afraid Ram Gamliel would die. Adahachi, at that moment, Nafak Shipurim, Mibeis Ram Gamliel, the Shaifer announced, the announcement came out that Ram Gamliel died, passed away. Amar Allah, he says, her
brother.
Yeah. Amar Allah, she said, he said to her, Mina Yadas, how do you know? How did you know that he was going to die? Amar Allah, she said to him, Kach Mekablani Beis Avi Abba, this is what I heard from my father's house. That all the gates are closed except for the gates of mistreatment, and so that's why I knew that
because they mistreated you.
They mistreated him.
So what? So why? I'm not sure. So why is this called the Rabbi Eliezer?
Sorry. That was like the most intense part of davening. So that's when it would.
Well,
I guess it's different.
It's important.
Yeah. Tanarabanan. Starting to Bryce Manas again. Someone that mistreats a convert, violates 3 prohibitions, 3 negative prohibitions. someone that oppresses him, over Vishnayim, violates too. Maishna mana the Ksiv Shleish Lavan. What's the difference when it comes to mistreatment? It says three negative prohibitions. One of the three is that you shouldn't oppress your fellow, and the ger is considered your fellow. By oppression also it says three. It says but also by oppression. What is the difference? Oppression is claiming money from him. What's the difference between mistreatment or oppression? By Leisia like Kanisha is when you when he borrowed money
and you're pushing him
to repay. So it's the same thing. It also has Ella Echad Zev Echad Zev B'Shleisha. So it adjusted. It says both of them have three prohibitions. Tanya was taught in the Brayser Rabbi Eliezer Agadol Leimer. It's interesting that now he's called Rabbi Eliezer Agadol right after the story. This is Rabbi Eliezer ben Hyrcanus. This is Rabbi Eliezer Agadol. He says the Pirkei de Rabbi Eliezer.
So did they remove the?
That's a very good question. Did they remove the Chayrim afterwards? We have Gemaras that say that on the day that Rabbi Eliezer was passing away, the students were there, and he was.
You mean till the end of his days?
Yeah. No way. Yeah. The students.
So, for example, this statement happened before that.
Right.
They wouldn't have quoted him after that.
Right. Unless after Gamliel died, maybe they took it off. Yeah. I saw in the commentaries on the Mishnayos and Kalim, there was a discussion in the Tiferes Yisrael. I think if they took it off or when they took it off. Wow. Where's the Mishnah in Kalim? Mishnah is Perek Mishnah Yud. Yeah. The commentators over there discussed it. It was taken off. How do they translate this? It says
I'm just having a problem with this story because we see that when Rabbi Akiva came to him, it wasn't that he was arrogant. I'm Dafka telling you, as soon as he said to him that he sat on the floor, he started meaning he was makabel.
Right.
So where was the cher?
The problem was that he would not change his opinion because that's what he accepted from he knew from his teachers what the halacha was. The sages knew from their teachers what the halacha was. He had a different tradition, and he couldn't change his opinion just because they were the majority. So the rule is they have to follow the majority.
Even though he was humbled by it,
so he himself had to hold his opinion, even though the halacha for everyone else would follow the majority.
But he has to be accepted of the rest.
So they had to separate him so as not for people to follow him.
So yeah. What is specifically was?
Yeah, there's a Gemara somewhere. After he passed away, Rabbi Kiva went over and he said, went over to the stone that he sat on. He says, from this stone is the Torah came from Sinai. This is where.
No, what I'm saying. What was the reason?
What was the reason that he was excommunicated? Because people were going to follow him, and then they would have two different.
That was specific
about taharos.
About impurity.
That could cover every day.
Yeah, but the other one accepted. The Shammai can continue to hold their own way of doing things.
That's the Gemara in Yavamas, where they did follow their own ways, but I think they were careful not to.
Just keep it to their household.
Yeah, this was before. I guess this was before they had that. All of the other arguments. This was like originally they wanted to keep it all together.
So Hassan has a priority.
Who has the priority?
The group of rabbis.
Yeah, the majority.
Yeah. So now,
by quantity.
It's real numbers.
So that would be like to Shulchan Aruch.
How do they translate over here? Huh? Yeah.
So if that's the case, he will have to follow. He
Right.
needs to change.
But he himself doesn't have to. It's everyone else has to.
Oh, he can keep the old.
Yeah, he's supposed to follow his own tradition because that's what he heard from his teachers. But
From even his father,
Yeah.
his family, and
yeah,
stuff. Honoring your father and your mother, right?
it doesn't have to do with the honor of your father and mother. It has to do with that, the way he was taught. He's a student of Rabbi Yechon ben Zakkai. Okay.
So as long as he keeps it to himself,
Right.
he doesn't go and teach
Right.
everybody else. This is what he's supposed
Right.
to do. Then
Right.
it's
So that's
okay.
what they meant when they excommunicated him, that he shouldn't be teaching. Be separated. That's what it seems. So it says, why does the Torah so careful with 36 times? It says, and some say 46 times, about the not to oppress a convert, because he has a proclivity to evil, because that was his earlier. He knows the other ways. What's the meaning of the pasuk that says, "Don't oppress a convert, don't mistreat him, because you were converts in the land of Egypt"? Tanina taught in a brisa. Reb Nasnaimer says, "Mumsha b'chal temel chavercha." If you have the problem yourself, don't tell it to your friend, because you were also converts. Everyone was a convert. I know Damriyan Shid is what people say. The zakif plays a kifa. B'duske le'neim l'chavri zakif bin benisa. If someone has in his family a relative that was hung, like a death penalty or something, so you shouldn't tell in front of him. Shouldn't say, "Can you hang up a fish?" Because even the word is going to remind him. It'll make him uncomfortable about that. In Marvin.
Okay, so I asked my students to make a family tree. One guy says, but a lot of them say, as a part of our family, we don't talk about, we don't mention. I can't put it on my family tree.
What do you do?
There are two cases. One is, well, it's my grandmother. We had a break in the family. We don't talk to that part of the family. I said, how long has this been going on? She said, maybe 10 years. So I was 5 and now I'm 15. So do you want to talk to your grandmother? She says, yeah. So I said, why don't you call her? She calls her grandmother after 10 years of being, and they talk the whole night. She reconciles the family.
Uh-huh.
The other case is where my father said, if I ever talk to his brother, he'll excommunicate me from family. And so he doesn't. He just leaves that part of the family. They don't want to face it.
That's sad.
Then you correct one.
What?
You correct one. You correct one of the.
Yeah, one of them, like, she corrected herself.
In Marvin, I don't know. In Marvin Paris is too complicated. The Gemara is easier.
Yeah.
In Marvin Paris for Paris. Someone that's selling produce from his field, you should not mix in other produce into it. Sometimes you go to like a farmer's market and it turns out they're selling you stuff from Publix. And you think like, oh, this is so nice. The farmer himself grew it. You shouldn't mix in. Is that what they're doing? Who knows?
I'm sure.
Even if it's the same, you're not allowed to. Even if it's the same new produce.
If you grew it,
right?
If you use a
We're
store,
going to
it's
see
okay.
if you're a store, it's not a problem. You'll see in a moment. For sure, you shouldn't exchange. You shouldn't mix in new with the old, because the explanation over here is that the older grain is easier to turn into flour than the new grain.
Such great
the
stories. I
Machal is,
didn't rush to come. I'm just listening to the stories.
Be'emes Amro. In truth, they said that we're going to see in the Gemara that whenever it says Be'emes Amro, that means this is the halacha. The yayin etir la'arav kasher barach neshu mashpicha. You're allowed to mix a a stronger wine into a lighter wine because it makes it better. Ein ma'arvin shmara yayin b'yayin. You can't mix sediment of the wine into the wine. Aval nice shmara, but you can give the wine together with its sediment. You don't have to remove it. Mishin nisarav mayim b'yainai. Someone has wine that's mixed, water that's mixed into his wine. Laim kerena b'chanos. Shouldn't sell it in the store. Unless he lets everyone know what's to each person that it has water mixed in. You can't sell it to a merchant, even though he does tell them, because the merchant is probably just going to trick everyone else. Places where the custom wants to put water into the wine, they're allowed to. Hatagar, the merchant, he can take from 5 different threshing floors and put it all together and sell it together. Mehigita is from 5 different wines, and put it into one flask. As long as he doesn't intend to mix a better one with a inferior, I think.
If you disclose, I think it's okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. It's just like premium and then mix it.
Right. So then the Bryce saying Tzarech Lema Chadashis Me'arba Yeshanis Mishalish Dein Ma'arvin for sure. If the new grain is cost 4, not cost 4, is cheaper, and the older grain is more expensive because there's 4 sa for 1 sela versus 3 sa for 1 sela that you can't mix the new grain in because the new grain is going to be cheaper because you're selling it as older grain. Meanwhile, you're mixing in this other stuff. This with coffee, they have a lot of different grades of coffee. There's cheaper grades. And
so instant coffee you can make from low quality beans.
Yeah.
And people don't know the difference between what this means.
Right. Even it's exactly the opposite, that the expensive one is getting mixed into the cheaper one. Because maybe a person wants specifically to age it, and for him to age it, he wants to get the newer ones. He doesn't want the older ones, even though they're more expensive. So you can't just mix it and say, "Well, I give you the better one." So it's better for who?
For the one who's selling.
Even though it's more expensive. It's more expensive. I'll give you the more expensive ones, but he didn't want that.
Fair, you know.
In truth, they said, which is referring to the halacha, that with wine, you're allowed to mix the more stronger wine into the lighter wine. Amra Belazar, Ada Amra. Regarding this, it says, you see that Ada? Ada, this means on this. Kol Be'emes Amru, halacha, whenever it says, that's a Yerushalmi word, Ada. In the Bavli, it's usually not there. So I think it's a quote. I don't know. Whenever it says in the Mishnah,
it should have said Aleph Dalet Aleph.
Usually it's Hada. Usually it's with a hey. Hada. Here it's with the and that's the Yerushalmi way of writing it.
Wow.
Do they have any comment on that? And it's like a word that's not so common here. Amar Rab Nasan, Amar Rab Nachman, Ben Agita Shanu. Nachman says this is only talking about when they're adding in the wine, they're mixing in the wine. You're allowed to mix the stronger wine with the other one. That's only if it's before they're. Rashi explains the Ada. Ada is like Hada. It's only before the fermentation. It's only between the vats. You can't mix it in afterwards. It has to ferment together.
Mm-hmm.
In other words, you can mix a certain amount of this grape with that grape, the stronger grapes with the, but not after you make wines, you pour them all into one bottle. This is a very expensive wine. But in the Kamarvi Shleibenagitis, what about now? They're mixing wines. I'm gonna papa it's because they know already, and they see, like you said, if they know about it, it's fine. Ravacha Breder Ravika Amar Hamani Ravachi. The opinion of Ravacha, the Tanya Ravacha Mater B'Davar Anitam. Anything that people can tell the taste, or they taste it before they buy it, get a little taste, and it's fine to do to take a taste. If you want it, you buy it. If you don't want it, you don't. You're not allowed to mix the sediments in. But you can give its own sediment. So Amra Reisha in Marvin Klal originally says you can't mix it in, and then it says you can mix it in. What does it mean that you can give him its own sediment to come delay that you're letting him know? But he says further on, it says that you can't sell it in the store, small amounts, unless you let each person know. Then you can't sell it to merchant, even if you do let the merchant know, because you're afraid the merchant is not going to let everyone else know. Which means that the first part is talking about even if we don't let him know. So and then it says you're allowed to mix in its own sediment. Amar Rav Yehuda says, you're not allowed to mix in yesterday's sediment with today's. I guess I'm calling it sediment, but I think it actually floats to the top. But how do they translate it over there? So I think it would. They say sediment. Oh. Sediment sounds like it falls to the bottom, right? I think I don't know if it means yesterday's wine or yesterday's what they would scoop out of it or something. Someone poured wine out of a barrel one day, leaving the sediment behind. I mean, not mix the sediment into wines. The wine poured on another day from a different barrel. The reason for this is that the sediment from one barrel ruined wine from a different one. But this is merely a way of illustration. Its essential point is that the prohibition against mixing sediment to wine is limited to mixing sediment from one barrel into another. So as wine poured on different days to stress that he is discussing different barrels of wine. Okay. It's different barrels, it's not different days. That's the main point. Even though it says, I'm sorry? Yeah, I'm done.
Another parish. I'm just thinking, why have we switched topics here from previously talking about borrowing for a gear,
right,
etc., and now we're talking about don't mix the past with the present. It just seems like it was nice. A segue there. Also,
very nice. Good
also
shot.
with the different wines, you think of children from all different places.
Rabbi.
Sfardim, Ashkenaz, this, that, white, black. You put them in kindergarten together and let them grow up and learn together. They see no difference. They all come out the same as far as they're concerned. Right. As a mensch. You take them later on in life when they've all been brought up in their own things, and each one has something negative to say about the other, depending on the person. So very I'm nice. Just saying, it just seems that it was
very nice.
Rabbi.
I heard Reuven Feinstein said when he was younger, they didn't have separate schools for Sfardim and for Hasidim. They all went to the same day school, wherever it was. They said it says it was much better socially. Than, we got to understand each other, the different things, different minhagim. It says now that we became so big that we have our own schools for each one. We don't know the others minhagim. We think it's like, what are you doing?
By the way, what's nice in this shul, and we all know it, is how we have so many people will come, and we right. all have such apparently, it's like most people
most people are faking it well.
They're doing a great job.
But you are allowed to mix in from the same barrel. That's what we're saying. If someone has water mixed into the wine, you shouldn't sell it in the store unless you tell everyone. Rava, they brought him wine from the store. Mazge, he mixed it. Tame, he tasted it. Didn't smell properly. Shadri l'chanusa, he sent it back. Yeah. Amalei Abaya says, "Vanantran v'leila tagar, af b'sheidiyah." What's his problem? Abaya is asking that he can't send it back. He's going to sell it. Because he already mixed it. That's the problem. Because Rava mixed water into it. Amalei maska didi made the yadiyah. Everyone knows the way I mix it. V'chitema detafei, v'chitema detafei machayle umasbenlei. And if you're going to say that maybe he's going to add in his own and he's going to mix more, and he's going to sell it, then you can always be concerned about that. And you can never give anything to a merchant to sell because he can always mix more water in. The Rebbe was saying that his mixing is acceptable because he has like a perfect mixing. He has a why was his mixing acceptable?
Was he mixing, wasn't he mixing just his cup and said return the bottle?
I think he mixed the bottle. Remember, there was one person that used to mix the wine, and the Rava, who was blind, maybe Rabbi Yosef was blind, and Rava came in and mixed the wine for him. Remember this Gemara?
Yeah.
He said, "Oh, this is the only one that can do this is Rava. It must be Rava's here."
I know that.
Right. But why was Rava's acceptable? Rava says, my dilution is easily recognizable because I add so much water. Therefore, storekeeper cannot possibly market it as full strength wine. 26. And if you'll say that perhaps storekeeper will add more full strength wine. That's
To
the problem.
strengthen it.
Strengthen it. So then you always have to be concerned that you can always dilute it and do all these things. Okay. Let's leave it over here. What's the test? Smells good.
I don't mix wine. I don't know. Yeah, that sounds right.
We're half a page. We're on the page that we're
Yeah,
supposed
because
to
we
be.
don't start till.
No,
Coming up.
I'm at the Mishnah.
Oh,
Okay, shkoyach.
Correct.
Thank you.
Okay.